Hello, and thank you for coming to our presentation. Today we'll be talking about some of the AI activity at Yale, as well as specifically diving into some of the application that we're doing at the Yale Library. With me today, Michael Appleby. He's a director for software engineering at the Yale Library. Lauren DeMonte, the AUL for research and learning at the Yale Library. And then I'm Dale Hendrickson. I am the Senior Director for Library Information Technology and the Interim Associate CIO for Faculty of Arts and Sciences and School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. I tried to get some more titles so it would be more Yale-like, but unfortunately I ran out of time. So I'll do a quick review of where we are at Yale with AI and how we got to where we are. I'll hand it off to Lauren to talk about the library context, and then Michael will give a demo about the tool that we developed for the library. So the initial approach that Yale took was trying to look at AI. They knew it was coming and it was going to be impactful, and they wanted to be ahead of the game. Sometimes Yale has been a little bit behind. This time they decided not to be left behind. So they put together a proposal that wanted to stay within the confines of Yale's mission, really focusing on the research, education, preservation, and practice side of the university, which are the core components of our mission, as well as trying to make sure that we maintain the diverse perspectives across campus. With that, they wanted to make sure that the efforts and the planning were faculty-led. So they engaged the deans of across Yale to participate in putting together a task force that would then come up with recommendations of where we wanted to go. We really wanted to make sure that it was a centered approach and moving forward as far as how we would approach the AI aspects as we went forward. With that, some themes emerged. We wanted to make sure that Yale's continuing leadership in the space according to our mission. We wanted to make sure that we focused on the ethical and societal impacts of the technology. We also wanted to make sure that our students were well prepared for the marketplace that they're going to be entering in soon after they graduate. Wanted to make sure that it didn't stay isolated within just certain areas of the university, but that it was university-wide so that everyone would have a chance to leverage and use this technology. And then again, focused on protecting and using institutional data in the AI context. That led to some recommendations, and significant investment in compute and access, faculty dedicated to AI, recognizing that the impact on society and where it was going, circular innovation, making sure that things fed each other and we kept it going, basically following the standard practices of agile learning as we go forward. Making sure that we had adequate training and policies in place so that staff and faculty and students and others were prepared for using the technology and understood the guardrails that were being put in place. And making sure that it was a collaboration tool, making sure that we didn't do this in isolation, and make sure that we were really focusing on the community aspects of AI that were possible. And then really trying to emphasize that this is a tool for humanity as opposed to the other way around, making sure that the AI was used for our benefit rather than just the technology for technology's sake. With that culminated from that report, a $150 million investment over 5 years in the AI space. With that, there was a significant commitment in the research space of at least 450 GPUs at this point. We know that will evolve over time. Also leveraging what kind of cloud resources were available in the space. And then using the Massachusetts Green High Performance Center along with some of our other institutions within the region as far as leveraging the infrastructure necessary for research. On the other side, we had looking at the training and the sport side of things, making sure that there was a degree of AI literacy across campus. So we put together short courses and videos. We engaged in prompt-a-thons to get people comfortable with the technology. We held AI office hours to make sure that people had the opportunity to have one-on-one conversations and learn more about it, as well as coffee talks in a very similar kind of environment less formal, where people can learn about the technology. And these are the groups that participated. We had our central ITS group, our Center for Learning and Teaching and Learning, the YCRC, the Yale Center for Research Computing. The Yale Library was a remarkably present and active partner in the development of a lot of the initiatives that were highlighted on the left side of that list there. And then also the Office of Public Affairs and Communication. One of the things that came out of this recommendation was making sure a tool was available to the campus. So we collaborated with a company called Soliance to develop a product that we internally call Clarity. So basically, this is an independent model tool, so it sits in front of any model that we want to put in front of it. With that, there were some guardrails put in place, meaning that the data would not pass through to train other models, meaning that the data would stay within there. Also, with that level, it came down to protecting Yale's data and making sure that users' data was also protected as well. You can learn more about the process and what's going on at Yale with at the ai.yale.edu. It's a great resource. I would encourage you to visit it to see how we kind of wound up here and what we are doing currently. And then with that, we took that and moved it into the library. We had corresponding priorities related to the AI initiative on campus. So we wanted to do an ongoing exploration of AI, and we also looked at an opportunity to use a large language model within the context of digital collections, which is really what Michael is working on here. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lauren.
So at the library, we're really seeing Yale's investment in AI as an opportunity to develop and execute our own AI strategy, certainly, and to do three transformative things. We want to center the expertise of library staff within university-wide initiatives, build the library's reputation and profile as a place for innovation and problem solving, not just collections, although collections are important, and to accelerate culture change within the library. And this means shifting mindsets, approaches to work, roles. And we see this as a really kind of powerful engine for that work. We're doing this work through both patron-facing initiatives and staff-facing initiatives. And I'm going to run through a quick overview of some of the work happening in these areas. And I think these examples will kind of show you how we're trying to manage change and achieve the goals on screen right now. So by leaning into the expertise that library staff already have in information systems, information and digital literacy, knowledge practices across disciplines, in research and learning support, we've been able to significantly deepen our partnership with our Center for Teaching and Learning through AI. So we are partnering with greater frequency and at a deeper level. So we have a shared triage model, for example, for questions and requests related to AI. We're working together on an AI literacy program that will help instructors integrate AI literacy AI into their syllabi in creative and critical ways, and also empower students to become thoughtful and empowered users of AI. Drawing on Yale and Yale Library's historic strengths in humanistic research, we're also working on developing a shared position that's going to focus on pedagogy in the humanities and AI. So that should be a really interesting position to look forward to and see what comes out of that. We're also working on finding instructor partners who will work at integrating our AI tool, which again, Michael will describe shortly, into their course in some way, whether it's through an assignment or an activity. What's been great about this is having the tool is actually helping get all of our librarians out across the disciplines talking about AI and pedagogy with faculty. So we're kind of out there doing that important work. It's also giving us an opportunity to develop a tool with direct feedback from instructors. It's a very tight feedback loop and students as well. So we think we can build something that will be actually kind of high value, high use. And we're lucky to have money from the university's AI budget to provide instructors who partner with us with RA funding so that they have support to actually integrate the tool into their curriculum in some ways. I think that's a really important step here. We have to build those bridges. We're also positioned to kind of act as a community hub for this work, right? Connecting researchers and students to folks working in similar or allied areas around AI. For example, because of earlier work that we've done through with the minimal computing folks, like through DH communities, and a sort of awareness of the broad research interest around sustainability and climate change at Yale, we've been able to pull together a community of researchers and practitioners interested in smaller scale AI or tiny ML. And it's like sort of nice to be the hub of that work and doing the sort of methodological or kind of content-based community building and support. We're also going to focus a lot on services and programs to support intermediate level users, right? We know that beginner stuff is usually really well handled. We have expertise that can help our more advanced researchers. It's that mushy middle that really enables people to do more. And we want to be in that space where we can help build those kinds of on-ramps. We see this group as a cross-disciplinary group. We see them as potentially a cohort and as a group of people that can sort of do the most innovation potentially. So I think that's going to be really exciting for us. Internally, our staff are engaged in many experiments to improve library workflows. So creating space and providing resources for thoughtful and exploratory grassroots projects is helping our organization build knowledge and capacity in really sustainable ways, including engagement across cultural heritage units, which I think is really, really important across Yale. This is helping identify when and where AI might actually be useful for us and giving us some really important tactical and strategic directions. We're also seeing a lot of informal learning groups spin up, including a sizable community of interest that's supporting information sharing, idea generation, just sort of, really interesting probes into this world. And we're actively working to develop AI knowledge and competencies with a formal organizational learning program that's launching in January. So this is part of our commitment, Yale Library's commitment to professional development and a way to ready our staff for change. The goals of this program are to build shared knowledge and a shared vocabulary around AI, concepts, tools, methods, outputs, to motivate employees to explore the implications of AI within their domains, to surface priority areas of organizational learning and development related to AI, and to contribute towards the development of an AI competency framework for Yale Library. This kind of level setting is, I think, the most important piece of the puzzle for us organizationally, so we have a strong foundation to build from and innovate together. So these are some of the ways that we're trying to engage with AI and contribute meaningfully to Yale's goals in this area. And now I'll hand it over to Michael to talk about the most exciting part, the thing that we built.
Hi. As Lauren mentioned, Yale Library has supported several AI experiments, and we'll say they're very much experiments, over the past year. The tool I'm about to show you today was developed as a demonstration of how large language models might assist a user of our digital collection system by providing additional information about the content of a digitized object. As a prototype, the tool, we didn't want to disrupt ongoing development work in our digital collection system, so we developed this as a sort of standalone adjunct. And it uses IIIF, which is the International Image Interoperability Framework, to access the digital object and its constituent images from our library servers. As such, it probably could work with any IIIF-enabled repository, but of course, I'm only pointing this at content from Yale. Yale Library in this system provides access to an extensive and varied set of digitized 2D materials, so this only handles 2D. We have over 200,000 objects, over 5.5 million images, and about 3 million pages of existing OCR text. So that's been extracted from the images. So we have a lot of text data already for the LLMs to work with. It's unevenly distributed throughout the various collections there. So we have certain large print collections that constitute a lot of that, and certain archival collections that have had a lot of attention for OCR, and a lot of others that have not. This tool that we built functions at the level of the individual objects. If you're an authorized user of the tool, you'll see a link in the object page that will essentially open a new tab and initialize the tool with that object. At that point, if no text is already available in our system, text extraction will be performed on demand using a cloud service. Here it helps that 90% of the objects in our system contain fewer than 50 pages. So you don't really often have that many pages to process, but there is a bit of wait. And as you can see, the tool does not have a chat interface. I think that's one of the things that we're experimenting with here. Instead, the application presents a curated list of prompts to the user. Clicking on the prompt submits it and the text of the object to the selected LLM. The language model can be changed. We have ChatGPT 4, we have Claude Sonnet 3.5, and we have others within the ChatGPT and Claude families. And the interface is really intended to encourage the use of multiple LLMs to run the same prompt to allow the user to compare the results and the output of the LLMs. You can also run, of course, the same prompt multiple times against the same LLM and see how its its output varies. And so the thought behind this is, as we teach students more about how these LLMs function, how they can use them with our digitized materials, they can also become more critical consumers of the output that they're seeing. We've implemented a selection of prompts. I don't think any of them will surprise the people in this audience. The simplest are forms of entity recognition. For example, this list of names that was extracted from the article I showed in the previous slide. Of course, the LLMs provide the responses that are limited in length. So, lists will be selective if you're analyzing a large set of content. And that points to another critical thing, I think, in interacting with our digitized content, which is the user should be able to select the subsection of the digital asset to perform the analysis on. You don't always want to try to analyze the entire book. It might not fit in the context window of an LLM. If you're dealing with something smaller, like an archival folder, you may have many letters within it. You might only want to analyze one or two at a time. So allowing the user some control over what's sent, I think, is very helpful. Here's another example of a prompt to identify locations. The source document is handwritten. It's from the 19th century, and it documents travel from England to Italy, a sort of grand tour type trip. The metadata for this item in our catalog lists fewer than 10 locations. In this analysis, you can see turned up many more. The text extraction for this is performed on demand using, again, a cloud tool for OCR and HTR. The underlying text is not great, I can tell you, but the LLM is still able to get a reasonable amount of data beyond our catalog data out of the object. The ability to compare output from different models is useful. So here you see slightly different lists of organizations. That's the prompt, list organizations. There's more to these prompts than you see here. But ChatGPT and Claude produce different output with that prompt. The source text is a 19th century Russian biography of Pushkin, for which we already had OCR. And the LLMs, you can see, have identified the organizations. They've quoted the Russian, and they've also glossed the titles in English, which is very helpful. And you can see that they have a different emphasis in what they've picked up. The GPT has picked up publications as organizations, which is reasonable. There are entities behind them that are arranging those publications. Claude has picked up military units as organizations and ignored the publications. So this is an example where, running multiple LLMs side by side can be instructive. We can elicit additional information from the LLM by prompting it to provide context drawn from the source document. So here's a list of literary references found in essays by Voltaire to the French Academy, published in 1776. Again, this is OCR'd on demand out of the print publication. Voltaire is arguing that French drama is superior to English drama. He's not being very kind to Shakespeare. And so you can see the response to this prompt is like listing the works. It's listing, providing the authors, but then also giving you a sentence of context about that work in Voltaire's argument. So we've seen Russian, we've seen French. I thought, well, what language do we have that's probably least represented on campus, in terms of native speakers? And I found Hungarian. So here's a TypeScript essay in Hungarian running the same prompt that we just saw against Voltaire. Well, it works. We have ChatGPT analyzing the document, identifying titles of literary works, providing cultural context. And I love number 4 here, where there's an indirect reference to a literary work. It says, oh, I know who that author is, and I know who their famous play is, so I'm going to tell you that it's likely this work being referred to. So like a more traditional entity extraction is going to not come up with that title, right? Another area, and I think this is potentially interesting as we work with instructors, is we can lean on the language model of the models a little bit and ask for terminology in a specific discipline or domain. Here, this was a medical journal or record of a hospital from the mid-19th century, and we've asked it for medical terms, but you could imagine this for, say, a history of art class and changing it to, discussions of painting or discussions of architecture, other things that might be even more narrowly focused in a given teaching and learning context. And finally, a common use case is summarization that we all know and love for our own, use of LLMs. We can ask for summaries. We can put them side by side. We can compare them. We can see in this case that GPT and Claude are actually, they pull out different details in the summaries, but you can cross-check them and see that they're generally giving the same overall impression of the document. They're not contradicting each other, and they're providing useful information. The language models are limited, of course, by the quality of text available to them. So looking forward, we hope to investigate additional approaches to text recognition, including possibly the use of multimodal LLMs. That's not the point of this demonstration. I think we're aiming more at classroom use, pedagogy, and so forth. But in the background, we hope that this drives more investigation of how we can provide high-quality text to the models. One project that we hope will go forward is being sponsored by our Cultural Heritage IT collaboration, and that would be a deeper look into provenance documentation for Yale's collections that we have. These are sort of internal documents, but would involve digitization, text extraction, and analysis, and that hopefully could point us to techniques we could use on our archival collections. Yale's been collecting for a long time, and so we'd likely see 19th and 20th century material being digitized as part of that collaborative project. The other interesting data set that we have is during the pandemic lockdown in 2020, we started a transcription project when folks were working from home, and we used the From the Page platform. People might have heard of that. Usually used as a crowdsourcing platform, but we kept it locked down to staff. And I'm told that we have about 15,000 pages of transcription made by our special collections staff. So it will be interesting to see whether we can use this as sort of baseline data so that as we look at machine HTR techniques, we could actually run a comparison against what our staff came up with and see what kind of results we're getting. Potentially, if we were ever to train a model, we could potentially use that as training data, right? So there's a lot of potential value to be derived from that text that's still awaiting some processing before it could be ingested into our digital collection system. As Lauren mentioned, we hope to pilot this tool with one or more courses next semester to get feedback from faculty and students. We hope the feedback we gather will help us understand better the needs of our community as we contemplate future uses of generative AI in library services. Thank you.
At this time, we've opened up for questions that you may have.
Hi, I'm Rachel Sandberg. I'm at UC Berkeley, and you're going to get another UC Berkeley question in a minute. Possibly even like 5 more. My question is, Yale is a private institution. You don't have to worry about this quite yet because you're what's called a Title III institution. Public institutions are a Title II institution for purposes of the American with Disabilities Act. And I'm wondering if you are planning ahead, because something is going to happen for Title III institutions too, to use AI with your special collections to improve the metadata to make it compliant with WCAG 2.1.
That's a new one for me. So, any thoughts?
You can just come to us. We'll figure it out. And then
Sorry about that. Great question. Thank you.
I'm Anna Sackman. I'm the data services librarian at UC Berkeley, and I think I might have an easier question than Rachel.
Thank you.
My question is for Lauren. Could you tell us a little bit about the AI training that you've been doing with librarians and library staff, some of the different topics, and if they've been receptive to it or not?
Will this work? Okay. So the formal learning program is something that's coming through an existing structure that we already had at the library called Yale Library Learns. It was an organizational learning kind of initiative. And so I think that structure helps get people sort of interested in and motivated because they've had good experiences doing professional development through that lens. So that is launching in January. We're kicking it off with a symposium, and then we're going to be having a series of talks, and there's going to be a workday learning course, actually, that's really going to get at the core of those competencies. So I beyond the community of interest that's formed, so maybe there's 60, 80 people in there, which is a pretty good number of people. There hasn't been a ton of uptake. I will say that in my portfolio, the research and learning portfolio, there is the expectation that everybody completes the workday learning course. So it's a little top down because I think it's important to get people over the hump and over that fear. The course can be completed, it's 20 minutes. It's not really a big ask, but it just begins to give us that level setting. So that's something we're going to keep an eye on. I think it's really important for us to try to have this tide raise all boats, and we don't want to leave people behind. But I hear you that it's an uneven uneven interest. We do hear a lot of concern about environmental questions and ethical questions and things of that nature. We're trying to lean into that and engage our staff a bit more to help surface questions and solutions around those topics as well.
Can I just jump in on the previous question? Our museums have really shown an interest in machine captioning of their images, and so we do have a really strong cultural heritage IT collaboration at Yale across the museums and library. So I suspect they will be taking the lead on that aspect. There's also been research out of our Lens Media Lab recently that's been really interesting. They're part of our Institution for the Preservation of Cultural Heritage. And a researcher there, data scientist there, published an article comparing various language models, multimodal models, and their ability to caption images that they thought were particularly challenging. As someone remarked, that research is a few months old and already 6 months out of date. Everything is just moving so quickly. But we could dig up a reference to that article, which was really very methodical and very interesting because it took into account both results, cost, and by proxy, environmental impact probably. So really, yeah, the library, I think, is just waiting on the museums who have a really strong interest in kind of taking on that work.
Over here. But you can't see. It's really blinding up there. My sympathies to all of you. This is really neat to hear about. Congratulations on getting the library inserted into campus-wide AI discussions. I think you might be able to give another talk on that, whatever strings you pulled. I'm really interested in the demo, and it looks like you ended up doing something that's kind of midway between just having researchers put stuff into Clarity, if that was the name of the campus-wide playground, or building something into your digital collections platform. It seems like there's a lot of advantages to that, but what do you get by not just having people use Clarity rather than what you've primed it with? Did that question make sense?
Yeah, at least as it stands, the text extraction in Clarity did not seem super capable, and I think we need to look at that some more. The other issue here, and I think the question that this is trying to get at is there a role for this collaborative prompt engineering, prompt development with library and faculty to then put this in a system where a student doesn't have to become the prompt engineer, and they can say, okay, these are some preceded prompts. I'll start with those. Maybe I do then move into Clarity, or API access to Clarity is coming this semester, so we could plug into Clarity for a chat component in this tool. And to me, that's interesting because of the point I was making about trying to allow the user to select part of an object and analyze part of an object. And when you get to an archival folder or something that doesn't have page numbers or any way to refer to a section of it, I think the ability to have a sort of a IIIF image viewer where you select start and end and say send that if you're trying to work with a subsection of an object, could be helpful.
Perfect. That was a better answer to an inarticulate question. That was perfect.
Hi, I'm Sean Murphy, Illinois Tech systems librarian. I have two questions, and the first one you might have already answered, so forgive me, but for the Clarity tool, what's the computational infrastructure? Is that hosted locally or?
Is it on? No, it is a cloud service that we're working with them on. Yeah, and then I'm sorry, could you restate the? Yeah,
That pretty much answers my question. Is it whether you had it running on like local machines or if it was a cloud service?
No, it's a cloud service.
My second question is, so you're having users, you're kind of giving them a set of prompts that they can select which model to run the prompt through. Did you discuss doing any caching of those results for future, like for the next person to interact with that object, so you don't have to rerun that kind of?
We could. I think one of the ideas here is that it's valuable to see the variability in the responses, and so if we just always gave you the same response for that model, you wouldn't be able to see that, right? If I run the same prompt with the same material through GPT-4o twice, I'll get slightly different responses. And so, and obviously we can kind of adjust the temperature to see, how much variability we want. But, again, if you're thinking this about the pedagogical use, not only in the special collections, but about the abilities of AI, then that I think is interesting.
Okay, thank you.
We have time for one more question. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Carol Kyoto. I'm from the Claremont Colleges. I'm also a Yale PhD 2014. And I'm really excited to see that the library is bringing on board a lot of the research that actually has been done by Yale graduates and in fact was done in the library as well. I think it was 2016 when I first started doing work with neural nets in the library there, and so it's really great to see, thanks to the efforts of many who came before, to see some of this coming to fruition. It'd be great to see them recognized as well. One of my question is related actually to a project that I did in 2019 with Harvard University Library and the Harvard Art Museums related to the Collections as Data initiative, and we were doing something on images as data. And one of the results that came out of this, using sort of both large language models and computer vision to look at collections, cultural heritage collections, particularly at large research institutions whose collecting practices have been somewhat iffy in the past, is that we discovered that we really needed some sort of a framework, an ethical stewardship framework for evaluating whether collections were suited to this kind of algorithmic processing. And so my question to you is, have you given any consideration to the suitability of these collections to algorithmic processing? And if so, what is kind of the framework that you're currently using? Thanks.
I mean, kind of, I would rather say. Like, everything in the DCS is openly available. It's open access. That's why we're sort of targeting those materials at this point in time. We're still in an experimental phase and trying to make sense of the direction and the development of this tool. So I take your comments, though, that maybe that's an area that we could be a little bit more thoughtful around, and sort of take that back and establish more guardrails for that. But we haven't led with that. I'll be honest. Mea culpa on this one.
I will say that we do need to engage with our sensitive materials task force. And it's interesting because we do have texts in the collection that the models will flag, right? They'll refuse to process because of the content. I'm thinking of materials that are just so inherently racist, right? That they're just, the models aren't going to touch them. And it would, we should probably have some sort of flag for that processing. And I also think it's interesting because it's an issue that's come up as we've, as Clarity developed as well, is like what happens when if students put things into a chatbot that repeatedly trigger those guardrails? Are there any sort of issues that we run into with the vendor? One of the nice things about not having a chatbot with this material is that if there's a problem, that we know the problem is from our side, it's from the content from our digital collections, which we know inherently is worthy of study, because we're not taking any kind of end user input, in this system right now anyway.
And I'll just say that access to the tool is very mediated right now. It's not thrown open to the world, right? You have to be a partner with us in integrating it into your course, and there's going to be working with the RAs and other folks to look at the subset of materials that we're going to be looking at. So it's not quite as open as it might seem. That maybe addresses part of that question.
Great. We kept you way too long.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for staying and listening to our presentation.